We condemn those actions of the person or persons who sent those devices in the strongest possible terms, and we are determined that justice will be done. In the meantime, as we proceed to carry out our duties, we will not be intimidated by any threats.
That was Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and joining us on set, Sam Stein, politics editor for the Daily Beast, and Jason Johnson, politics editor for The Root. I want both of your thoughts on what happened today, but let me just play a little bit of what Trump has been saying about Democrats on the stump lately.
They want to turn America, these Democrats, and that's what they want, into a giant sanctuary for criminal aliens and the MS-13 killers. Democrats want to abolish America's borders and allow drugs and gangs to pour into our country unabated. As we speak, the Democrat Party is openly encouraging millions of illegal aliens to break our laws, violate our borders, and overwhelm our nation. That's what's happening. The Democrats have launched an assault on the sovereignty of our country, the security of our nation, and the safety of every single American.
Well, so here's the thing. We don't know what happened today fully, right? We know that these bomb threats were made to liberal boogeymen, or I should say conservative boogeymen, who are liberals, but we don't know who sent them. What we do know is that we've had sort of a ramping up of this type of rhetoric, and we've had previous threats and instances of violence, for instance, the shooting in the newspaper in Maryland. And after those instances, nothing has changed. So Trump went silent for a couple of days after that shooting, but as everyone here knows, he has now since returned very much so to the press being the enemy of the people. It's as if nothing happened. The NRCC, the House Republican Campaign Apparatus, today put out another ad in which George Soros is depicted as a puppeteer of a Democratic candidate for the House. This happened 2 days after George Soros' own house was targeted with a bomb. So nothing seems to actually change the rhetoric. We go through a pausing period where we reflect and we condemn it and we say we're going to get to the bottom of it.
We don't all. No. We do.
Sure.
Trump doesn't.
Trump doesn't. Nothing changes. So I am very curious to see what happens tonight at his rally in Wisconsin.
Are you? I mean, do you really think he's going to say we got to tone it down? Do you think he's going to edit these statements and say Democrats are not creating giant sanctuaries? I mean, they're not in bed with MS.
What I expect is that he will either avoid it entirely, which is my expectation, or he will just plow through it. And that, to me, is the big problem here. We don't know who did this, but we do know that we have our own ability to control the rhetoric, to change the rhetoric, and oftentimes, Trump especially, we don't take that opportunity.
Jason, I think this is about more than the rhetoric, because the rhetoric has been going on. It has been present at his rally since he was a candidate. What is new? What is new is the toxic mix. Yeah. The toxic mix of 2 years of embracing dictators and giving our allies the shaft. What is new is the combination of the attacks on the media as enemies of our people, plus the policies that are totally favorable to autocrats and dictators. You know, he wants to show his love letters of, you know, in your interview, we were telling Josh Dawsey about the love letters from Kim Jong-un, one of the most brutal dictators in the world. It was required reading in the Bush White House, Crimes of Pyongyang, about the brutal treatment of this guy is, in his words, in love with him. Vladimir Putin is more trustworthy than you. I mean, what's new isn't the attacks on the media. And you're right. We all try to tone it down for a day after something happens. Right. He doesn't. Yeah. But what's different is this layer upon layer of disparaging law enforcement, disparaging intelligence, and embracing autocracy.
And also the recognition on the behalf of the people who engage in these acts that nothing will happen.
Right.
Nothing's going to happen. Right. They can kill themselves. They can get away with it. They can hide. That's
here and there.
Exactly.
Here it's the candidate who beat up a reporter.
With Jamal Khashoggi. And that this administration will do nothing. And this administration will continue to embrace those people. And I think what's key, look, all of us are in a fortunate, blessed position. We're on the air. But what happened in Maryland is 20 minutes from my campus, right? I have a colleague at The Root whose phone number was doxed a week and a half ago. She got death threats. I have another colleague here who got death threats at her home on Monday. This is not just something that happens to high-level people. This is men and women going to work every single day. And we have an administration that acts like an abusive husband that continually says, oh, my gosh, I'll never do this again. I'll never do this again. And then it happens. And then they're quiet for 2 days. And then they do the same thing. The only solution that we can have is to hold every single politician accountable. I don't care if it's your mayor. I don't care if it's your city council person. I don't care if it's a member of the Senate, and say, what will you do to protect the fourth estate? Because that's the only thing that we have to keep this country on track. And if they're unwilling to do it or incapable of doing it, vote them out, because we can't trust the White House to protect us.
You guys aware of anybody that feels more uncomfortable now than they did in these jobs before, just on the beat?
Well, it's worth, to sort of answer that question, it's worth mentioning that another wrinkled layer of this is that the president and Republicans have decided on an intentional closing strategy for the midterms of painting an apocalyptic world. The president was specifically told, and he agreed with this assessment, don't run on your achievements, don't tout your achievements, but paint an apocalyptic picture of the world with Democrats as an angry liberal mob run amok with yourself and Republicans as the soothing bomb. So that would speak to not a particular level of discomfort, because this is, again, it's worth noting, and fear-mongering is a common tactic to close campaigns. That's not necessarily unique to this administration or this White House, but this was an intentional decision. So everything the president says that we've been seeing in the past few weeks, and he's just going to be ramping up that campaigning between now and the midterms, is a very deliberate, strategic decision to try to turn out his base of supporters.
The pathology of projection is so amazing to me. You got lock her up, which was a chant, I believe, started by Mike Flynn, who's now a felon, who's pleaded guilty. You've got Donald Trump talking about, you know, an apocalypse that he's largely created. You've got, I mean, they've tried to label the other side with all their own sins, Eli.
You can hear projection in almost everything that he says from that rally stage many a night, and I think it's not without some grounding in actual fact to interpret it that way. But I think Ashley is right. The conversations I've had with people, they don't view this through a moral lens. They view this as their job. They view the closing message as a tactic, and they're not really worried about the consequences. And when uncomfortable situations come up, like today, when they have to take questions about, are you complicit? Are you inciting some of these behaviors? Are you responsible for this? They don't want to answer those questions. But what you see from Republicans, what you see from people who work around the administration, who support the administration, you don't see a lot of hand-wringing. You see people either acknowledging things that they know are wrong and saying, well, he's just joking, or don't take him seriously when he's making fun of the body slam and actually reenacting it on stage. He's just joking. He's not actually condoning violence against a reporter. You're supposed to believe after the fact that he's just joking, even though they want people to take this rhetoric very seriously. And you're also seeing from some Republicans on the campaign trail that they're actually imitating Trump's own message. You had a candidate in Pennsylvania a week or so ago making a video where he was threatening to step on his opponent's neck with golf spikes. I mean, it was ridiculous, but that doesn't happen if the president is not out there every night, you know.
Well, two things to that. I think one is they don't take questions, and I think this is important because they don't ever get their feet held to the fire. So there is no press briefing today from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Donald Trump.
Are they still a thing?
There's been one in
2 weeks ago was the last one.
So
not once a week, not even once a week.
So there is no pain point for them to have to be addressing this issue. Secondarily is they've concocted a echo chamber, amplified by Fox News, but really amplified by the internet, in which they're sort of either...
And the Russians. I mean, they're
well, they're either rewarded for this, or it is sort of pushed to the side, or it's glossed over with conspiracy theories. So today, if you went on any pro-Trump forum on the internet, the primary point that they were pushing was that this was a false flag. Right. Ridiculous. That this was something that the Democrats did so that they could engender empathy for Democratic candidates across the country. People are like, well, why are you covering this? This is all conspiracy theories. And yeah, that's true. It's ludicrous. But what the importance of it is that it's created this ecosystem in which you can basically justify and rationalize any major news break by saying, you know what, it's not us, it's them that's doing it. And I think that's having a pernicious effect on this administration, on politicians in general.
Let me bring Frank and Chuck back into this conversation. Everything I know about false flags I learned on Homeland last season. But here we are. And let me ask you, just based on, I think the National Security Division at DOJ DOJ was the last law enforcement entity to charge a Russian for meddling in the midterms. But this is an effort. The work of Donald Trump at his rallies, as amplified the way Sam Stein says by the internet, is precisely the work that was done at, we believe, Vladimir Putin's either direction or with his permission in 2016. Has Donald Trump and have Trump and Hannity picked up where Vlad left off? First to you, Chuck.
Well, you know, that's a painful analogy. You would hope that Americans weren't doing what Russians are doing to us. But I take your point, Nicolle. And if I can make another one, there's a very tangible corrosive effect of what's going on right now. The solution to this particular crime does not fall into the lap of federal agents. Part of the work is done in labs, but part of the work is done on the streets. And so you're going to have agents and cops, men and women, knocking on doors and asking questions. That's what they do. And they need responses, honest responses. And if the person opening that door and seeing an FBI agent standing in front of them doesn't trust the FBI because the President of the United States says you can't trust these folks, it makes it that much harder to resolve these cases. That is the true corrosive effect of these words. This case does not resolve itself. People resolve this case, and they need to be believed when they're in the communities asking questions and seeking answers.
Frank Figliuzzi, same question to you. Are we seeing, has it just taken us 2 years to get to the point where work that Donald Trump maybe didn't feel comfortable doing brazenly 2 years ago, sowing these divisions, putting out false flags, if that's the right term, is now just being done out in the open by Donald Trump and his allies?
Yeah, I think there's a comfort level now, and I think the epitome of it was coming out and saying, I am a nationalist, right? And just jettisoning any concern about the baggage and history of that terminology. And we have Fox News echoing that theme. It's become the mantra. It's not something on the periphery anymore. This is the theme. And so as a former law enforcement official, what I'm struck by is, in juxtaposition with the bombings that we're looking at, is the fact that we're our own worst enemy. So this becomes an internal threat. We are all talking about Russia. We're talking about the situation with Saudi and China and trade wars. But the reality is that we act within our country to hurt ourselves. I hearken back to the Oklahoma City bombing and Timothy McVeigh. We were quick to start talking about this as an external threat. It's international terrorism. Look what they've done to us. It was us that did it to us. And I fear that with this mail bomber, it's quite possible that it's us hurting us. And it's because our administration is enabling and facilitating that mindset.
Chuck Rosenburg and Frank Figliuzzi, we're lucky to have you any day, but especially on a day like today. Thank you so much. When we come back.